This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 9th of November, 2020, and I am 2J.
I'm JM.
And I am GK. I just want to welcome you all back. We took a season break.
Yes, we
and
did.
many things happened while we were away.
Yes.
But for now, in the Daily Nation, the headlines, in case you missed them, MCAs face legal horror in 2022. In the Standard, isolated. And in the Star, we have governors list their demands for BBI support.
Yes.
And I want us to begin with the governor's demands.
Yes, but just before the governor's demands,
Yes.
let me touch on something while we were away. So the much anticipated BBI report was finally launched, first in Kisii on the 22nd of October, and then officially in Bomas the week later. And during that launch, you will recall that the DP decided to make known his, in my view, what were rather frivolous reservations, for which he was justly booed vehemently by MPs or MPs. And I personally expected a much more elegant critique from the Deputy President. So rather than tell us how unjust it would be for the executive to appoint an ombudsman to the judiciary, he ought to have challenged Kenyans perhaps to consider a complete paradigm shift, where we transition from the post of non-executive Prime Minister, as has been presented in this report, to that of an executive Prime Minister, similar to what we had when Jomo Kenyatta was Prime Minister in the 1960s. The fact of the matter is that BBI is good for the country, as the President said on that day. It provides a framework for opposition politics. It creates a more inclusive system of government that incentivizes politicians to make broader ethnic coalitions.
Yes.
And it takes away the high-stakes nature of the election, so that the country does not have to experience an economic slowdown 1 year to and 1 year post the presidential election. And finally, let me call him out on one more thing by asking a question that Professor Matahi Ngwenyi has asked for a while now. If RUTO has opposed BBI, why isn't he telling us what he wants? Right? If RUTO says BBI is about creating positions for politicians, what he is not telling us, what he's not telling Kenyans, is he himself is also interested in preserving certain positions.
Yeah.
He wants status quo to prevail so as to retain the current two-seater Ferrari presidency. In other words, he doesn't want to share power. It's as simple as that.
Very true.
But let me get on to the Star, still on BBI. Today's paper, governors list their demands for BBI support. It's as simple as that. They have a raft of recommendations they want incorporated. I'll name a few. They want to be able to pick their deputies after the general elections rather than having running mates that they have to run with. They also want the powers to hire and fire those deputies. They want the removal of the proposal that they should choose a deputy from
The opposite
sex. And finally, they want something about the controller of budget having the authority to approve funds, even in the absence of the county revenue allocation law, and that stems from the stalemate that we experienced at mid-year regarding the county budget allocation, revenue budget.
Now, I disagree almost wholeheartedly with all of those recommendations that the governors have made, but I will say at least they're making recommendations. You know, they've said, like, let's come to the table, let's negotiate, as much as those negotiations don't make sense. I think that governors should have a running mate, because a running mate is a reflection of who you are, right? You're saying that this person has the same values, the same goals that I do, and I want you to believe in them as much as I do. I think if you allow a governor to choose their own deputy governor thereafter, they could choose their cousin for all you care, you know, their neighbor, their gardeners.
And someone they can easily manipulate.
Exactly. And then they have the ability to then remove them from office. And I think that's what this, the 2010 constitution was trying to avoid. The ability for the executive to, you know, remove and add people into, you know, positions of power at any given time. So governors, try again, but good try.
Good try. So we have a 3-part criteria that we're going to use to break down the headlines. We will ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy. What do we think of that headline?
It's okay.
It's an okay headline.
We'll park it. Seems not much has changed since we've been away.
Unfortunately.
So in the Daily Nation, MCAs face legal horror in 2022, and there's a new order, or rather a law that was passed back in 2012 has come back to haunt politicians, and they must now have a degree to run for any seat. And the people who are really complaining here are the MCAs. The County Assembly Forum has come forward and said this is going against the sovereign will of the people. Because what if you are a good leader and the people want to elect you, and the only thing holding you back is a piece of paper? And I can see why they would make such a choice. When BBI came about, when the report came out, the MCAs are going to hold a lot more power in terms of how the CDF is dispersed. And the allocation to the counties is also going to increase from 15% to 35%.
Yes.
So the MCA becomes king in this scenario, and he must be able to dispense with these monies in a very effective and proper way. And so that's why education is a key factor here. Although I can see a rebuttal from the county assembly guys. They're saying, listen, if you're a good leader and you can do your job, is the little piece of paper the one who's going to hold me back? For example, Queen Elizabeth I, Peter the Great, Ramses II, all inherited their thrones but were great leaders. You have Dwight Eisenhower, who was the 34th president of the United States, and he only had military experience. And then on an extreme end, Hitler had no formal education, and went over to sort of disturb and destabilize Europe. But the idea here is, I think, okay, fine, we're having this debate, and that is actually what is important in that sense.
And I understand it, because a lot of the time, sometimes they take experience to qualify as what a degree may have. If you were an informal accountant for 10 years before any kind of accounting certification was available, you're understood to be a qualified accountant.
Because you have the experience.
I
was pleasantly surprised, guys. More than 230 MPs have between a first degree and a PhD.
Really?
And so they meet the minimum requirement. At least 13 senators hold PhDs. And 56
are
of
they
them...
honorary or...
I don't know.
They work for...
That is a good question. I will go and investigate that.
Let me weigh in on this from the Bible. When Jesus went to the cross and he eventually got promoted to go to heaven, he left the church to two people, really. Peter, who had absolutely no degree. Peter was a fisherman all his life. And Paul. And Paul was one of the most educated people in society at that time. Now, Peter is because Peter truly, truly loved Jesus, loved everything, Jesus' ideology and his message and everything that he stood for. And that's why it was left to him. The person you love is the person who loves you is a person you hand over power to. But Paul is really the one who pioneered and even expanded the frontiers of the church. And it's because he was an educated man. This is the former Saul. And the lesson there is really the person who's more educated is going to give you is going to have a higher caliber in terms of interacting and passing laws and representing you, and they're going to give you more value for money, in my view. So I definitely have a bias for
the educated.
To the educated, and it'll also incentivize people to pursue knowledge, pursue all these things which are going to get them to be better leaders in society.
And this new referendum is actually asking for the clarification of roles between the National Assembly and the Senate, and so strengthening the Senate really requires that you have a high caliber of people so that they can, pass good bills and things like that.
And I don't think that's something that you can ever complain about. Has anybody ever said, I want somebody, with no experience to be the person who guides me? No, you want somebody who has experience in what they're doing, no matter what that experience may be.
Absolutely.
Now, the MCAs have COVID on their side. They could say that, listen, I was a potential aspirant in 2022, and COVID, has disrupted a lot of the academic calendars. So maybe this is... there's a point for you there. Take it when you go to court. You can put it forward. Let's park that. Quite liked it. Lifted the veil of ignorance for us. In the Standard, who is isolated?
Isolated is
William RUTO. William RUTO.
I think we're moving to
another continent. But yes, I think he is indeed isolated. We may get to that tomorrow. But isolated, according to the Standard, is none other than Donald Trump, who is still president, but he's incumbent president. He's on his way out. However, this is a lot of this is up in the air, and it's quite interesting to watch. So they're talking about how the world leaders are abandoning Trump. You actually have a lot of the White House staff as well who are beginning to tender their resignation. Many people around him are wanting to tell him that the race is over, give up, concede, but he's refusing to do so. In fact, there were rumors going around that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, had gotten a bunch of people together to go deliver the message to him to tell him, you need to give up. And when they asked Kushner if he would join, he said, no, I'll come another time. I don't want to do it right now. But I think that we know after 4 days, I think the world was at a standstill waiting for it to happen, waiting for either candidate to get to 270. And currently Biden is at 290 electoral votes. Trump is at 214.
So it's as good as done.
It's as good as done. And I think what was scary is in the beginning, it looked like Trump was going to win. But then I think all those mail-in ballots kind of flooded in and swayed everything in Biden's favor. And they say that this was the largest voter turnout in 120 years. And Biden has received the largest popular vote ever. So Obama had previously beaten that record. Biden currently stands at over 70 million votes, and he will be the 46th president. And they say also that Trump is the first president since 1992 to lose re-election. And I think the last person who had lost was Bush Sr., and he lost to Bill Clinton. So
you know, Trump, he called us peepholes or something like that. He said something very, very
derogatory.
Terrible, derogatory. And because he was so condescending of us, he could not even come to the likes of Yoweri Museveni to ask him,
for
how
some
do you
advice.
stay on? For some advice in terms of rigging. How do you stay on in power? So from 1986, I think they've had America's had 9 presidents. And Museveni has stayed on. He could have taken on very, very good lessons from people like Museveni and other African benevolent dictators who love their countries.
who says Africans have no lessons to teach the rest?
Exactly, right?
And so, a lot of professionals have said, it was Trump's sort of failure to deal with the COVID response, but also just a lot of gaffes along the way. And failure also to respond to the cries for social and racial justice in the country. So we saw a lot of these movements taking hold this year, and he just sort of did not respond.
They actually said that while everything was going on, while the election votes were being counted, he decided to go to Virginia to his golf course.
To play golf.
I guess that's what a winner does, I suppose.
So there you have it. So who do we give, guys, our winning headline?
As much as I like Isolated, I would go with the Daily Nation.
I think I go with Daily Nation as well.
Even though I'll agree with what you said earlier, not much has changed while we were gone.
Well, we're back. There you have it. Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? I want us to begin with the Standard.
In the Standard, we have the Statue of Liberty holding a slab that says democracy, and she has abandoned her flame. Behind we have, I suppose that's Joe Biden, who is laughing quite joyously. And the Statue of Liberty is very curiously grabbing Donald Trump in a specified region down north. Down south. And Trump looks like he's screaming in horror. And Godot's little guy in the corner is saying, it's payback time, I guess.
Wow.
And the relevance here is, I don't know if many people remember, but I'm sure most people remember.
When he was coming off a bus.
So there was some footage that was leaked in October of 2016, just before the election, of Trump on a bus with a TV host. And he was talking about women in a very degrading manner. And he was saying that, you can just grab them by their southern regions. And so I think a lot of people thought it would tip the vote in Hillary Clinton's, favor, and it didn't, because Americans don't seem to care about dignity. But I think, that's the idea. It's payback time, I guess.
I really like that cartoon.
I like it.
I think we should
love
pack it. Listen, who's the guy in the back? It looks like, is that Obama?
I think it's Biden.
Is it
I'm
Biden?
not sure. Yeah.
It's Biden.
Anyway, we need to figure it out. Daily Nation. We have the Donald in a wastebasket with his signature long red tie and his signature hat, Make America Great Again. And he's been chucked in with a phone, I guess, for tweeting his, whatever papers and shoes and things like that. And I guess that's that. But what I want to pivot to is there's this professor called Alan Lichtman, who is a professor at the American University, and he had predicted a Biden victory using 13 keys to predict an election, a presidential race. And he's done this ever since 1984, and he's always called it right. He even called the Trump victory in the years before. And so some of the keys that he looks at, or the factors he looks at, are incumbent charisma, so how well do you speak to your support base? Are there any scandals? Is there social unrest? And he looks at the short and long-term economic factors. So how are you doing in your time? And then whether there have been any major foreign or military successes. And you can see Trump has failed on many of these keys. And so it's not a surprise to anyone that he may have
he lost. Maybe we should use those keys and adapt them for the Kenyan political scene.
Oh yeah, for sure. And predict the 2022 election.
Exactly.
Stay tuned.
However, I will say let's trust the cartoon.
Yeah, it's not so
little of it made sense. And I think Iga on a Monday is not always very inspirational.
Let's move to Celeste.
Yes, so here we have a cartoon of our superheroes of the day. Caricatures of President-elect Joe Biden and VP-elect Kamala Harris holding a pen and suggesting that they're about to make U.S. history, change the course of history, redeem America's image in the world. And looking up towards them is a caricature of the globe with a smile on its face.
Looking so happy.
Looking very gleeful, signifying hope for better times under Biden's administration as compared to Trump's administration. Hope for better chapters. But what I will say to Kamala and Biden is that the only way when you're up is down.
Is to come down.
Is to come down.
Wow.
Talk about my brother and sister. I'm there. To be aware, he's going to be the oldest
president-elect.
President when he's actually oldest president America's ever had.
77.
70. Actually, he's going to be 78. He turns 78 on the 20th of November this year.
Wow.
And he's going to be retiring at like the age of 86.
Let's hope he's of sound mind. I think this cartoon to me is too optimistic. And if there's anything, now I have to have unpopular opinions right now. This is not a victory for democracy or the world at all. I think that if you look at both Kamala and Biden's, track records, they both have very spotty paths. And I think that if you were to look at it and say, is this a victory? I don't think so. As you've just said, the only way when you're up is down.
It's the same way Kambu voted for
Oh my gosh.
Or Nairobi for Sonko.
You see how many lessons Africa has for the West.
Really? As Prof said in his tweet a few days ago, the fact of the matter is that Biden didn't win, Trump lost.
Precisely.
And that's what I think you're saying too, Jay.
Can we give the Standard though our winning country?
Oh yes.
Grab them by
absolutely top 5
by stuff.
There you have it. Standard gives us our winning cartoon. Kindly remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pang Free to Air, and Star Times.